So today I'm going to be taking a look at what is now becoming quite a popular practice of refilling these small canisters from bigger camping gas canisters using these devices, these little adapter valves that you can pick up from eBay or Amazon quite cheaply. Whilst this has become really popular, there's 5 or so key dangers to this that everybody doing it should be aware of, because of course what we're dealing with is flammable gas, and accidents can and do happen, and there's again plenty of videos out there showing the consequences of some of those accidents. There's a number of different types of adapters out there. This one I bought from eBay for a few pounds. This is for connecting to screw top canisters. You do also get the ones to allow you to use the hairspray style pure butane canisters as well, with a push fit adapter as well. And the way these adapters basically work is by connecting both canisters through the adapter, placing this so the smaller canisters on the receiver canister is at the bottom, and then opening the tap to transfer the gas. Now there's a few other things we might do first, such as cooling the receiving canister to lower the pressure in this and make it easier to bring in the gas from the donor canister. So I'm going to cover 5 key dangers or things to watch out for today. The first is around using the wrong gas type. So to use this one as an example, this little 100 gram gas canister, or 100 gram of gas canister, the actual canister new weighs about 175 gram, contains a mix of 70% butane with 30% propane. Now, the super important thing here is vapor pressure. If we try and fill this canister with a different gas mix to that which it was designed for, that can create risk of explosion or gas leak, and this is where we need to look to first. So I've drawn a little graph here to help illustrate the points. Now along the bottom we have a temperature from -10 to +30, which is probably a typical operating range we'd be using one of these canisters in, and up the side we have vapor pressure. Now what we see here is that pure propane, this line here, has a far higher vapor pressure than pure butane. In fact, at 0 degrees centigrade, you'd be struggling to get any flame at all, or any gas vaporizing from the pure butane canister. Now, most of these mixed canisters are operating in this mix between propane and butane, typically say a 30-70 mix. And again, even though we have a higher vapor pressure than butane, and actually we have usable pressurization, or we have usable pressure from the gas, vaporization of the gas at 0 degrees, it's far lower than propane. In fact, even up to say 30 degrees, quite a high temperature we may be using this in, it's less than half the pressure of propane. So when we think about the canisters we're using here, what we're seeing is we've got a canister designed for pressures. It's kind of in a range here, obviously it will be engineered slightly higher. And if we try to fill it with the wrong gas type, so pure propane, we're subjecting this can to far higher pressures than it should be experiencing. Now, of course, as we can see with the much lower pressure we get from butane, if we were to fill this can with pure butane from one of these cheaper sort of hairspray style bottles, we're not going to encounter a problem. So it's okay to use pure butane in one of these propane butane mixed bottles, but not the other way around. So never use pure propane such as that from an LPG tank or large red colour gas propane bottles. The next common danger is overfilling. So each bottle has a maximum weight, or the weight it comes from the factory in, and this allows space for expansion. Effectively, as we all know, when temperatures change, materials expand or contract, and if there's no expansion gap within the cylinder, then as the cylinder heats, whether it's in the sun or inside, etc., and there's no gap, there's a risk of rupture of the canister or leak of gas to escape. So we want to avoid that at all costs. The way to avoid overfilling is really to stick within the weights that the canister came with originally. So if you think about this little Coleman C100 canister, oldish canister, originally weighed 175 grams from the factory. So I've put some gas in this, and we can see we're actually at 169. So we're within the original weight that the canister came from the factory in, and I wouldn't be keen to add any more for that reason. Risk number 3 to avoid. Now, bigger canister, smaller canister. This is only a 300 gram one. You obviously get the 500 grams as well. How do we get the gas from here into here? We use our valve, but we also cool this canister and potentially warm this canister to create a pressure differential. So if the large canister has high pressure, the small canister has lower pressure, the gas, when you open the valve, is going to be forced from the big one to the small one. Commonly, in order to achieve that pressure differential, we'll put this canister in the freezer, say 20 minutes, and some people talk about warming this canister. Now, this is where the risk comes in potentially, because again, whilst there is going to be some headroom in the design of these canisters around strength, vapor pressure, as we've seen from the earlier graph, increases a hell of a lot with temperature. Now, there's one nice account of somebody popping one of these canisters in boiling water and subsequently exploding and destroying his oven and parts of his kitchen. So on no account should we heat the donor canister to the point where there's risk of explosion. I think at best tepid water, if you really, you don't really need to heat it. I think if you're putting this one in the freezer for 20 minutes, but at best using tepid water, or most using slightly warm water, is unlikely to create too much risk. Risk number 4. So this one is about damage to canisters. Now actually you can see on this one there's a bit of surface rust, a bit more around the valve area as well. And this is a bit harder to deal with. Now personally, the reason this is a bit rusty, it's been sat in the shed for a while damp, but I would think twice about using this one too many more times. It's not bad rust, and a bit of surface rust is typical, but at the end of the day, we're talking about saving a few pounds. If these canisters aren't in great condition, I personally would think about not using it. Now, what constitutes damage? Dents, obviously we've got a tiny dent here, bit of surface rust, bigger dents, bigger nicks, or scrape or gouges in the main steel of the canister are all a risk factor, so you have to exercise your own judgment a bit. But again, I do on the side of caution with that generally. Danger number 5 is refilling too many times. Now, it says quite clearly on these that they are single-use canisters and you shouldn't refill them, and that's reflected in the design of the little Lindell valve in these things. So whilst we know you can get away with refilling these things multiple times, I would check the thread for wear, listen for any escaping gas, and think very carefully before refilling too many times, because these valves are just not designed to last a lifetime. They're designed for single use. Now again, this is a 100 gram bottle, so if you start to think about using the fact that we have the same valve in a 500 gram bottle, we can see that actually there's probably at least 5 times the life of one of these valves possible. So that's probably for me a reasonable rule of thumb. If you're refilling it sort of 5 times or so and the bottle's in good condition and you screw things in and out carefully, you're probably going to be okay. But again, you have to exercise your own judgment and listen carefully for leaking gas. So there we have it, 5 things to avoid when filling from a larger bottle to a smaller bottle. Firstly, using the wrong gas type, in the sense of putting pure propane is usually the case into bottles designed for a mix, or pure butane, which is obviously lower vapor pressure. Number 2, overfilling, going beyond the stated manufacturer's max or weight for these, which removes the expansion space required for safe usage of the canister. Number 3, overwarming the donor canister. Don't put this in boiled water or really hot water. That does massively increase the vapor pressure and increase the risk of explosion with disastrous consequences. Number 4, using a damaged gas canister. Now again, some light surface rust or a few minor dinks or scrapes might be okay. Use your judgment, and again, retire gas canisters that look past their best. And number 5, really going well beyond the repeat use of the canisters due to the valve design. The valve, as I say, whilst these are good reliable valves, they are designed for single use canisters, not designed for hundreds of uses. Hopefully that's provided a few useful tips on how to do this safely. There's a bit more information on the blog, so please click on the link in the description if you want to see any more.